Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. I thought I would begin by offering a few reflections about equanimity, or upekkha. This is one of the, say, most significant psychological qualities or emotional qualities talked about in the Buddhist tradition. But particularly, I think, because of the word we translate upekkha into in English, equanimity, it cannot easily be overlooked or seen as something a bit insignificant or not so, practical or even heartwarming, because the word equanimity in English means, it can easily mean indifference or not really caring, a kind of switched off, disconnected, and somewhat numb attitude towards things. But upekkha, I feel it's important to understand. It's the fourth of the four divine abidings, the Brahmaviharas. So those four qualities, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity or upekkha, they're great brightnesses of the heart. They're abundant, immeasurable. They are described as sort of vast, radiant qualities, abundant, exalted, immeasurable. So that, in a way, it's probably better to find a different word in English to render upekkha, because particularly in this time of the coronavirus pandemic, there's a lot of agitation, anxiety, a lot of turbulence. People are off the streets, in the main part, and people are sheltering in their own homes and flats, or they're in hospitals, or not out in the public arena. But there's a lot of agitation within the home, a lot of agitation within the heart. And really this quality of upekkha is to do with how can we skillfully relate to agitation. It's what to do in the face of turbulence. That's really its essence. And so that I feel it's good to reflect, well, what does a quality refer to? So it's a great brightness. It's not like a switching off or an indifference, a not caring, a going numb, but it's something else. There's another quality there, and it's not just the most refined or the final word of the Brahmaviharas, of the four sublime abidings, the divine abidings. It's also the seventh of the seven factors of enlightenment. When the Buddha talks about the qualities of the enlightened mind, upekkha is the seventh on the list, in a list of seven. Similarly with the 10 paramitas, it's the 10th of the 10 paramitas. And usually in the Buddha's lists, the one at the end of the list is the most refined, the most exalted, the most liberating, or the most subtle, and so that in a way this means that upekkha is the final word in these various lists of psychological qualities. It's sort of the final word of the factors of enlightenment. It's the final word of the 10 paramitas. It's the final word of the four Brahmaviharas. So in this respect, it's something to, rather than leave aside, it's not as interesting or impactful or say tangible. It's not so relatable as loving kindness or compassion. It can seem a bit sort of flat or say insignificant. But I would say particularly at times like this, in times of great turbulence and agitation, emotional agitation, if not social agitation, that it's really important, really good to get the mind around that as a quality. As I was saying, the quality of upekkha The English word equanimity doesn't really quite catch it. So many years ago, Lumpur Sumedho started using the word serenity to translate upekkha, which I feel is a bit better. It's got more of a heartful and radiant quality to it. That to be serene is not to be switched off or disconnected, but it's in a sense an evenness of heart, a balanced quality in the midst of a lot of imbalance, a lot of agitation and disturbance. And really that the quality of equanimity is how the heart can find a quality of stillness in the middle of agitation, in the midst of busyness. It's being attuned to that busyness, being aware of that diversity and multiplicity, aware of that range of activity, but it's attuned to it. It's not disturbed by that. So rather, it's like what they call the still point at the center, the still point of the turning world, the still center of being, and that at the center of the cyclone, that center of the turning wheel. The wheel is still spinning. There's movement, there's activity, but that right at the very center is not spinning. There's a quality of stillness. Also, I think it's also helpful in understanding upekkha as it's an energized quality. It's not a switching off of the heart. It's an attunement, so that the Brahmaviharas are all qualities of energy there, so emotional energy, but emotional energy that is very liberating, very wholesome, very noble, very beautiful. And so that in a way upekkha represents a quality of energized peacefulness in the attitude. And so that it's a way of being alert to things, really awake and attuned. The heart is wide open, abundant, exalted, immeasurable. Appamana means limitless also, that measureless quality of the heart. It's open and attuned to things, but it is even in the face of activity and turbulence, agitation, it is embodying a quality of stillness or serenity, evenness. There's a wonderful Pali word, not to make this into a Pali lesson, but there's one of the words used to refer to upekkha is tatra majatata, which means in the middle of thatness. So it's one of those qualities of upekkha is being in the middle of things, finding that middleness, and in that middleness there could be a quality of balance. So in our reflections, in the trainings that the Buddha advised in terms of developing the Brahmaviharas as an example. So the thoughts or the reflections that one brings to mind in order to develop upekkha are around cause and effect, which might seem a bit of a strange way to approach it. But say when we are talking about loving kindness, we say, "May I abide in well-being. May everyone abide in well-being." To develop compassion, we cultivate the thought, "May all beings be released from all suffering." To cultivate mudita or sympathetic joy, we use the reflection, the thought, "May all beings not be parted from the good fortune they have attained." But then when we cultivate upekkha, the reflection, it seems to change gear a little bit, because it's about karma and its results, because the encouragement that the Buddha gives for us to train or develop that quality in the heart is to reflect, I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. So that seems to be, what's that got to do with upekkha? How is that leading to radiance and brightness and limitlessness? But in a way, this is how the heart, in a sense, finds that quality of serenity, is through a real appreciation, an embodying of an understanding of cause and effect. Because this is essentially how we train the heart to see things in terms of nature, of how nature works, rather than what I prefer or what I don't prefer, what I was expecting, what I was not expecting, what I think is fair, what I think is not fair. It's rather putting aside the self-centered habits of perception and seeing things in terms of the laws of nature, what is called Dhamma niyamata, the lawfulness of reality, or the lawfulness of nature, the orderliness, the way things work according to natural cause and effect. So that even though we might be experiencing something painful, like I was asked a question the other day about what did I think was the relationship of karma and the COVID-19 virus, the coronavirus. I think behind the question was the implication of, do you think this is some kind of karmic payback, some sort of return coming back to human indulgence or human error, or some kind of wrongdoing on the part of the human race, that this is retribution. And my response was along the lines of, well, we're born, we have a body. The body is a very delicate, extraordinarily delicate and intricate set of organic processes, so it's natural for things to be able to go wrong. It would be amazing if there was a widespread state of health for everybody. I don't think there'll ever be a day when they close all the hospitals, or someone trains as a doctor and can't find work because nobody's getting ill. I do not think that will be happening. Not in this particular universe, or this particular realm. That's not the way nature works. So that when we see things in terms of natural order, it doesn't mean that we're passive, or we don't take medicine, or shelter in our homes, or take measures to protect our health or the health of others. Not at all. We take those steps. But the mind is not adding onto it this sense of wrongness, or it shouldn't be this way, or it's not fair, or why me, or why my friends, or my mother, or my father, or my partner, my Ajahn, my fellow monastics. The mind isn't adding on that sense of it shouldn't be this way, or it's unfair. Things might be unfair according to our expectations or our preferences, or even unfair according to the laws of the country, but that the mind is not seeing it just in those terms, but seeing rather in the broader, with the broader perspective, from a broader point of view, whereby if you've got a body, you're alive, then it's subject to illness, it's subject to injury, it's a fragile, delicate thing. So that if these viruses are around in the world, and this is a particularly sort of vigorous and easily spread virus in the human population, therefore, because of that vulnerability of the human system, then it's likely that there's going to be an infection coming around, and we are subject to that just because of being alive and having this living system that we do. So that the not just in terms of relating to the virus, but also relating to our human family, our human connections with our children, our parents, our sisters and brothers, and the rest of the human world. If we reflect on cause and effect and see things with that perspective, it has a balancing effect upon the heart. That's why it leads to upekkha. The Buddha encouraged this sense of reflection upon karma and its results, or cause and effect, because the quality of dukkha, the stressing, the tensing of the heart, is that feeling of wrongness, is that feeling of it shouldn't be this way, or nature is out of order. But even when something painful or difficult happens, getting a disease and dying, or having an argument with someone and then feeling regret afterwards, or feeling like a friendship has been broken or damaged in some way, then to be able to see, well, there was an angry feeling, it was acted upon. The result of that, having acted upon that angry feeling, is this sense of alienation from that person, and this feeling of tension in the heart. That's the cause, this is the effect. It doesn't immediately repair the friendship, it doesn't take the words away, but it enables us to see, okay, well, that was painful, that was the cause, having that conversation, having spoken out of anger, out of self-righteousness or fear, a reactive impulse, and here's the result, that's the cause, this is the effect. Aha. And so even though there might be a quality of pain, say a psychological pain on account of what was said or what was done, there isn't that feeling of wrongness. There isn't that feeling of it shouldn't be this way or this is unfair. But rather it's seen in its own light. It's seen for what it is. And then, because of that clarity of vision, then the mind can work in a more straightforward and uncluttered way to see, okay, how can we set about repairing our friendship, or is it an appropriate time to go and apologize, or if I look back and I see that yes, I was reacting a bit intensely there, I was moved by that angry feeling, so how should I best work with that, and what's the most appropriate way forward with that? So that we deal with our difficulties from a place of clarity rather than a place of reactivity and self-view. So what it's doing, upekkha, is an emotional quality, but what it's doing is it's like a gateway into wisdom. It's a gateway to insight. It's the gateway to freeing the heart from the habits of self-centered thinking and self-view, and really helping the heart to attune itself to reality, to Dhamma, attuning the heart to the nature of the way things are. And so that's the quality of balance, that's the centeredness. It doesn't mean that the painful things will automatically stop, or pleasant things will automatically arrive. No. But what it means is there's that evenness, that balanced quality, that tattva mujatata, that in the middle of things-ness, in the middle of thatness, that is a way that we can open the heart to the challenges and difficulties of living with each other, of being sort of at close quarters, and having a very, very radically reordered lifestyle for many, many people around the world. So we have a few questions this week, as usual, and some of them relate to this same theme that I was talking about. Some of them don't, but I appreciate people being diligent with coming up with these questions, and most of them are coming from within the Amaravati community. One or two slide in from outside, through one means or another. And the first one is, Dear Ajahn, could you please explain how atamayata can be considered the ultimate Buddhist concept, and how is it connected with the Four Noble Truths? So the word atamayata is familiar to some people, not familiar to others, and it's a rare word in the Pali Canon, but it's referring to a particular quality of awareness, and it's also connected to upekkha, to serenity. And it's not an accident that I chose it first, so I don't think, wow, that's a coincidence. I did choose to take this one on first because of the way atamayata relates to the development of equanimity, because it's really, in a sense, the most refined quality of upekkha, of serenity, equanimity, is represented by this term, atamayata. So the three different levels of equanimity, not to get too technical, but the first level is when everything is agitated, then it's the capacity for the heart to be still in the middle of a multiplicity of things. There's a lot of a big variety of that. There's a lot of things going on in the world. So in the middle of many, many that's, there's a quality of stillness and stability, a centeredness. So that's equanimity based upon diversity, as called. Then the next level of equanimity, the next level of refinement, is what's called equanimity based on unity. So with an increasing quality of awareness and attention, then the mind lets go of focusing on the details of the experiential world, and there's simply a subject-object relationship. The mind is aware of that, of there's an awareness, and there is a field of perception. There's the world of that. So there's a unified, the sense world is unified. So that's called equanimity based on unity. And then the third level, which is called atamayata, is where there is no that. And the word atamayata means not made of that. So it's the mind letting go of the whole subject-object relationship. So I also like to call that subjectless, objectless awareness, which is a bit of a clunky term, but it's there's a quality of knowing, but without creating a knower or a known as a subject-object duality, but simply the heart is awake to the reality of this present moment, this present experience, without creating a subject-object division. And so that's the most refined and complete quality of awareness, and similarly the most refined quality of upekkha, of serenity. So how that relates to the Four Noble Truths, I would say that when we talk about the development of the path, the fourth truth is the path leading to the end of suffering. The third truth is the ending of suffering. So that atamayata, that letting go of subject and object, is in a way how the Eightfold Path is fulfilled. And when that path has been followed to fulfillment, to its ending, then it leads to the ending of dukkha. So that the quality of mind that knows the ending of dukkha, I would say atamayata is that quality of awareness that knows dukkha has come to an end. There's no separateness. There's no subject and object. There's no thing here, no thing there. There's simply the Dhamma awake to its own nature. So that I say atamayata is essentially talking about that. So those latter reaches of the Four Noble Truths. I don't know if that's useful to or meaningful to everybody, but I think it's a skillful thing to be, recognizing that these qualities like upekkha, equanimity, if you take just one word to refer to it, but like many things, it's got a finer anatomy. It's got more layers to it than might appear at first view. So that, when we're developing that equanimity in the face of multiplicity, and just that starting off with, I need to be still in the midst of all this activity. I need to be quiet and to be stable in the midst of all these people, in the midst of all this stuff going on, in the midst of all this news. I need to find that place of stillness amidst this blizzard of information coming through the media or the people around me, or through the kind of computerized news services, Google News, or the newspapers or whatever. So that's the first level of upekkha, is of taking those reflections to establish a sense of personal stability in the midst of a lot of activity. And the feelings of the body, the sensations of the body, are probably one of the best ways. And using that, those reflections that the Buddha encourages, I'm the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, setting the mind in the direction of seeing things in terms of cause and effect, in terms of the mental side, and on the physical side, bringing attention to the body, training the body to settle, to be at ease, noticing whether the body is tense or agitated or slumped, and rather than going along with the habits of the body, training the body to have that same quality of centeredness, of ease. And so that, in the middle of a lot of people, a lot of activity, a lot of things, that your body itself is literally an embodiment of that quality of ease, or in the middleness, that quality of serenity. To develop that, the next level of upekkha, or equanimity, one of the most skillful practices, that sense of equanimity based upon unity, is to develop the inner listening to the inner sound, or the nada sound, what's called nada yoga. So probably many people are familiar with this, or watching or listening to this Dhamma talk. That if you've been around the teachings of Luang Por Sumedho and myself, we both talk quite regularly about using this inner listening, or inner inner sound as a focus for meditation. So just as I'm speaking right now, there's the sound of my voice, and then there's the people gathered around here in the sala at Amaravati. There's the camera that's connected up to various people all around the world watching and listening to this webcast at the moment. But there's the inner sound, the nada sound going on in my hearing at the same time. So that's in a way a reminder that this is just the field of perception. It draws things together so that by using that inner listening, it's like, yes, there's various people. There's Venerable Monunya, Venerable Nidaro, there's Evgenia, there's Sister Nyanasiri, there's Fiona, Sister Tana Vijaya, there's Maria at the back, there's Juan, Venerable Isaro. There's people, there's the space of the room, there's the colours of the red paint, there's the blue carpet, there's the white walls, there's colour, form, people. But in the midst of naming all those names and giving all those descriptions, the inner sound is going on. The inner ringing tone of the nada continues. So that to develop that quality of equanimity at a more refined level, to develop the inner listening, to develop that continuous listening to the inner sound, is that whether it's this person or that person, the sound goes on. Whether there's people or no people, the sound goes on. Whether it's daytime or nighttime, the sound goes on. Whether it's the webcast or after the webcast or before it, the sound goes on. So right in the it's a sense perception. The inner sound is it's a sound. It's a vibration, but it's a meditation object that can evoke that quality of unity, of connectedness, of uniformity, or a relatedness, a connected quality and a common quality of all perceptions, whether it's something that is seen, heard, smelled, tasted, or touched, or thought. It's all there within the field of perception. So that developing that second layer of equanimity is very much supported by the inner listening, by the nada yoga, I have found. And then the most refined one, the atamayata, it does take quite a lot of effort. It takes a real focus on that quality to establish it in any meaningful or real way. But even letting go of the nada sound, letting go of the sense objects, letting go of the sense of an experiencer or a talker or a doer or a meditator or a person here, an entity here who's experiencing a world out there, letting go of the whole subject-object duality to let the mind simply be awake to its own reality in a timeless, ever-present fashion. That's really a formless kind of meditation. It's not based on any kind of form. So even something like hanging on to the inner sound can be obstructive to the quality of a tamayata. It's a formless quality of mind. So it's in a way, it's best realized and actualized by the letting go, the non-grasping of any kind of form whatsoever. So, what's the next one? So, this is about routines. So, what is the work for which the structure of our routines are only temporary means to enable? So we use structures and forms, like our monastery routine has changed quite a lot because of the lockdown and the social distancing and so on. But we do have routines, like Sunday 2 o'clock, British summertime is the time for the webcast. We have our routines in our lives outside of the monastery and in the general world, and in the pattern of our life. We follow the lunar calendar and the seasons of the winter retreat time, of the summer vasa period, of the rains retreat, and so on. So what is the work for which the structure of our routines are only temporary means to enable? So we have routines, and personally I really enjoy the quality of rhythm. And one of the things that, even though it's a tragedy that we have this epidemic and millions of people have been struck by this illness, and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands now have died around the world, on account of this illness. But on a local effect, one of the things that I find is that I do enjoy things being pretty much the same every single day. Something in my heart loves that regularity. There's a sort of, yep, it was like this yesterday, it's like this today, and it'll almost certainly be like this tomorrow. Yes. So I don't think of that as a particularly exalted quality or something that's liberating, but there's something in the heart that enjoys that rhythm, that regularity. And so even though we can take a routine or something that is familiar, and we can make that an end in itself. It's like, this is how we should be doing. We have to meet at this time, or we need to be doing this. And we can make those routines or that rhythm, that repetitiveness, that can become an obsession or something that becomes a sort of a neurotic dependency upon that. But I would say that's grasping routines or structures in an unskillful way. Similarly, our robes are a structure; they're a form. The shaving our heads every 2 weeks. Society has many structures and rituals and forms that we follow. Like now the structure of social distancing. The mats are at least 2 meters apart. They're not less than that, so that people can be the proper distance. That's what rightness is at the moment. So we can take routine and rhythm and structure as an end in itself. If we do that, then it becomes a prison. It becomes something that's burdensome and difficult. But in and of itself, the purpose of having routines and structures and forms, they provide a simplicity. They are a way of say, helping there to be an agreed mode of behavior, an agreed, pattern to our lives. And earlier on I was mentioning this quality of Dhamma niyamata, the orderliness of reality. And so that the way nature works it has an orderliness to it. There's a lawfulness to it. Niyama means a law or a rule or a pattern that exists in nature. So Dhamma niyamata. So I feel that in many respects the patterns of our life, following the cycles of the moon and the rhythm of the days, the wearing of the robes, the shaving of our heads, and the say repetitive qualities of our lives in the monastery, but also in general. One of the things that is the source of that, yes, is that something in the heart delights in that orderliness of the Dhamma, that Dhamma niyamata. It's a fundamental quality of reality, is that lawfulness. There's a patternedness to the way that life works. And something in the heart rejoices in that, is encouraged by that. There's a sense of yes, that's how it is. There's a relatedness that comes from that. And so I feel that the structures that we use, they're a kind of scaffolding. Like when you're working on a building, or like you're fixing the windows on the temple, or you're changing the light, then you put up some scaffolding. You put up scaffolding for the reason of carrying out a piece of work or fixing something that needs to be fixed. After the work is done, you take the scaffolding down. So the structures of our life, and many of our routines and forms, they are scaffolding, or I like to use the term, they're convenient fictions. They don't have any intrinsic value or worth in and of themselves, but they become valuable because they're useful scaffolding. They serve a purpose. But if we cling to the scaffolding, if we cling to the forms, then rather than being something that supports, they become something that imprisons. And so that I feel that we can delight in the orderly quality of it, but I feel it's most helpful to relate to that rhythmic quality, or that quality of structure. It's of value to the degree that it can evoke that realization of Dhamma moment by moment, to, in a sense, to help the mind awaken to reality, to nature. One of the things about the lockdown and that's and to do with time is how every day is very, very similar. So that today, a Sunday at Amaravati is now extremely similar to a Monday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday. We have this webcast in the afternoon, but in many respects, a Sunday is completely indistinguishable from the day in the middle of the week. And because we don't have 100, 200 people showing up to visit as they normally would on an average Sunday in a normal year. So one of the experiences people are having around the world is that kind of forgetting what a week is, or like, oh yeah, I used to go to work on Monday, and then almost having to remember about time and days and weeks and months. And there's a distortion of time. The way the mind relates to time is somewhat mutated. And there was an article, I think, in The Guardian by Jonathan Friedland, I think his name was talking about this distortion of time experiences in lockdown, and he had a conversation with someone who also writes for The Guardian, who was in prison for about 20 years. And he said, this is probably not a very good comparison, but are there some similarities between this lockdown discipline and you being in jail for all that time? And he was a bit cautious about asking the question, because he thought this other friend of his was going to say, it's not the same. You can go shopping. When I was locked up in jail, I couldn't go out to the shops. So, I didn't have one walk a day out in the park. But he said it was interesting. He said actually there's a lot of similarities, and one of the things that is found is that there's this weird mixture of, as it was said in the article, that it's seconds can really drag, but days fly by. It's like, hang on a minute, it can be like tick, tick, tick. And 5 seconds can seem like forever, but suddenly, oh, what? It's 9 in the evening already? Huh? What? It's Wednesday? Well, I was just getting used to the weekend. Oh. And I was also reminded when I was reading that when Ajahn Visuddhi, who was one of the first residents at Abhayagiri Monastery in California, he was there for the first 2 years of the monastery, from the summer of 1996 to 98. And we were seeing him off at the airport. He was going to be travelling on to a different monastery. He'd been there at Abhayagiri for a couple of years. And we were sitting in the airport cafe, and one of the people who was with us said, So Ajahn, what was your impression of being at Abhayagiri? How can you sum up your time there? And he thought for a moment. He said, it was an eternity that went by in a flash. I thought it was genius. It's absolutely brilliant, beautiful statement. It's an eternity that went by in a flash. And so I think there's a lot of that eternity going by in a flash for people in this lockdown experience all around the world, whether you're in New York City or in Berkhamsted or Amaravati or Melbourne or Hong Kong, all points in between. That strange distortion of time, that the usual measures of our days and our life, a lot of them have disappeared. But I feel, even though some of it might be disorientating and make us on unsteady ground, I feel that we can make use of that unfamiliarity, even though we enjoy that rhythmic, or we can enjoy that rhythmic or repetitive quality. That sense of, it's all different. How does this work? Or what's going on here? I'm not used to this. That unfamiliarity is rather like visiting a strange country, or visiting a land that you've never been to before. Yeah, it can be challenging to the habits of attachment, but also it can be really refreshing. It's, I think, one of the reasons why people like to travel and go to new countries and different places is because of that sense of refreshing their perceptions, that things are all done differently here in this place. It's not the same, different customs, different forms. What's important in our home country is not important here. Things that I've never even heard of are really important here, that are not even spoken about, or don't even have a word for them in our home country. So I feel that distortion of time and the unfamiliarity is not something that is necessarily seen as an obstruction or as a problem, but rather it's helping that quality of the heart to rise up and to meet the unknown or the unfamiliar, and not from just trying to cling on to our familiar habits, but being open to how things are. And that leads me on to this question about faith. Again, not by accident. Dear Ajahn Amaro, would you be able to comment on the role that faith, saddha, plays in the practice? It seems that particularly when things are difficult and there's a need to put forth extra effort, it is faith in the Buddha as the supreme teacher, in his teachings as they have been transmitted to us, and in the living legacy of his disciples. That can be of most help. Would you perhaps have any suggestions on how to cultivate faith in this regard? I would say that in Buddhism, the quality of faith is seen as being very different from what we would call belief in the English language. So that when we meet with the unknown, when we are faced with uncertainty, then if that's met with from the habits of self-view and attachment and our ordinary sort of ego-centered thinking, then the unknown, we need to have a plan. We believe something to be true. We fill up the unknown with a belief, a plan, a hope, or a fear. We fill ourselves up with worry, because at least if you're worried, there's something there. At least there's a thing to fill up that void. So most of our habits about relating to the unknown and to the future as a felt experience are trying to get rid of that space, to get rid of that empty quality, to fill up the unknown with something, and so that we have a belief or a plan or a hope or a fear, and so within that, though, that is all feeding that same sense of ego-based thinking, and no matter how hard we try to believe something, there's still a murmur in the heart that says it might not be true, or you don't know that, and so we feel threat and doubt and anxiety on account of that. So that in respect to this question, I would say that faith is not just a matter of faith in the Buddha and the Dhamma and the Sangha in those terms, but it's at a more radical level. So the very basis of faith is not just an idea of the Buddha or an idea of the Dhamma or an idea of the Sangha, but it's really a quality of courage. It's that, readiness of the heart to be open to the unknown. And saddha in Pali, it's, even though belief and faith might seem very, very similar in English, the saddha does not necessarily have any kind of self-view embedded in it or as part of it. So saddha is one of the 5 spiritual faculties: faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom are the 5. So faith, saddha on its own, can be a completely selfless quality, and the more selfless, the better. The way that saddha works is that it's that quality of courage or bravery, that readiness to step forward into the unknown without filling it up. It's like letting the unknown be unknown, to not respond or react to that urge to fill up the unknown with a plan or a belief or at least a worry or an opinion, but rather to let the unknown be unknown. You don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know where things are going. You don't know how it's going to be. But saddha is that readiness to open the heart and to step into that, to take a step forward. But it's also informed. In a sense, it's informed by what has gone before. So trusting in the implications of what you know, your past experience, then you're ready to take that step out into the dark. That having come this far, you're ready. You don't know exactly what your foot's going to land on, but you're ready to step out and try your weight on that foot. And it's not bringing with it a quality of fear or threat, but rather when the heart acts on this quality of saddha, then the unknown, rather than being threatening, has a quality of wonderment. That the heart, there's a quality of mystery, of wonderment in the receiving of the unknown, like that. The feeling of looking up into the sky on a starry night, rather than, oh dear, I don't know what's going on up there. Just opening the heart to that mystery of all the stars and the planets and the darkness of the infinite universe, to just open the heart to that, to let there be wonder. Wow, so vast, we're so tiny. We're just on this little ball floating around in this vast infinite space. So that I would say that saddha is, it's not just hanging on to or revering an idea of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, but rather looking at the internal qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, so that not just the Buddha as the Gautama Buddha who lived 2,500 years ago, but the internal quality of Buddho, the awake, aware quality of your heart, so that having faith in the Buddha means that there's a knowing, there's a realization, yeah, the mind can be awake, the heart can know, it can be aware. And past experience shows that there can be awareness of delight and pleasure, there can be an awareness of dullness and boredom, there can be an awareness of pain and difficulty, and that awareness can know fully all those different experiences and not be lost or entangled in them. Faith in the Dhamma is not just faith in the Buddha's teachings as sort of verbal constructions passed through time that say describe how to practice in a skillful way, describing the nature of reality. But faith in the Dhamma is that the very fabric of nature. Everything, every aspect of your body, your mind, the world around you, physical, mental, and spiritual. Every aspect of body and mind in the world is an aspect of nature. So having faith in the Dhamma or revering the Dhamma is opening the heart to the nature of the way things are, the way your mind is, the natural quality of your mind, your body, and the world. So taking refuge in the Dhamma is essentially choosing to be realistic. To take refuge in the Buddha is to be awake, and then to take refuge in the Sangha, again, it's not just, as it said here, the living beings, the living legacy of his disciples. So when we recite the qualities of the Sangha in the puja, we say the 4 pairs, the 8 kinds of noble beings, worthy of gifts, worthy of reverential salutation, and so forth. So it's talking about those beings who have awakened to the various levels of enlightenment. But I feel it's also helpful to consider, well, what's the internal quality of Sangha? What is the certainly enlightened beings in the human realm are very worthy of respect, worthy of offerings and so on, and they're inspiring and gladdening and a source of great teachings and guidance. But what is the inner quality of Sangha? What is that unifying force in our heart? The Sangha means the unified assembly. So if we look at the awareness as the inner quality of the Buddha and nature as the inner quality of the Dhamma, what is the quality of the Sangha? So you can reflect upon it in different ways, but I like to see this as that in the heart which loves the good, what we call the guna dhamma, guna, G-U-N with a dot underneath, a guna dhamma, that quality of the heart that loves the good, that delights in wholesomeness. So taking refuge in the Sangha and having faith in the Sangha is that you know the power of goodness. You know that your heart has qualities that are wholesome, that are noble, that are respectful, that are harmless, that are honest. You know that from past experience, that quality is there. So that, I would say, saddha is, again, we use the languaging of taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, but the basis of saddha as a psychological quality, an aspect of your own mind, is that those inner qualities of the Dhamma as the substance of reality, the Buddha as the function of that fundamental substance, and then the way that manifests in terms of action and speech is represented by Sangha. Okay. Next one. Dear Ajahn Amaro, could you clarify the concept of karma in the Theravada tradition and karma as psychological value? But this is spelt K-A-M-A, but I think what is meant is karma, as in with an R in there, because karma with K, or karma with one M means sense pleasure, sense desire. So I don't think that the question is about that. I think it's about karma, and the Sanskrit is karma, Pali is karma, and usually we find the word karma or karma is used as a shorthand for karma vipaka, acts, because karma on its own literally just means action, doing something. So any kind of volitional or deliberate action is karma. Deciding to, the words I'm choosing to say, deciding to come along and listen to this Dhamma reflections today, deciding to switch your computer on and watch this through the webcast. Those are deliberate actions, intentional actions. So when we say karma, it just means the action. And then vipaka is the result of that action. So often when we use the Sanskrit word karma, what we're meaning is action and its results. Sometimes, and in the Oxford English Dictionary definition of karma is fate or destiny, which is not a Buddhist concept in many respects. But say, in terms of this question, could you clarify the concept of karma in the Theravada tradition and karma as a psychological value? So, kind of going back to what I was saying about upekkha, it's very helpful to see things in terms of karma and vipaka. This is what I chose to do. Here is the result. That's what this person did. This is the result. Here's the karma. Here's the action. Here's the result. This is the way that it works. If the action was based on a good intention, what's the result? If the action was based on an unwholesome intention, what's the result? What do you get? And so that by seeing how action and its results, how cause and effect work together, that is a gateway to wisdom, is a gateway also to peacefulness, that quality of upekkha, that balanced quality. So in terms of karma or karma as a psychological value, often, and I think what this is referring to here, when people say, what is it, if all dhammas are not self, what is it that's reborn? Then my short answer is habits. Because the habits that we have, habits of mind, habits of speech, habits of the body, they have a momentum, and the more that the mind automatically follows those particular tracks, then and says, this is good, that is bad, this is mine, this is familiar, this is good, this is home, I like it, or that's foreign, that's strange, I don't understand that, that's weird, it makes me unsettled. So that the degree to which the mind attaches to its habits and takes them to be me and mine, takes them to be sort of owned and embodying self, then that is what gets reborn. Those are the things that, say, are the fuel of rebirth, is that those habits of attachment and identification. And they can be wholesome or unwholesome or neutral. Just just because something is, say, an unwholesome action, karma isn't just the retribution for unwholesome acts, it's also the pleasant results of wholesome acts. And also it's the results of habitual acts that are based on self-view and attachment. So just because you've been born in England, you grew up in England, and you are familiar with the sounds of the blackbirds as the songs they make as they wake up in the morning or as they go to roost in the evening, that's a sound of home. It's familiar, you know that. And so that if you're away off on the other side of the world, you're in a forest in Thailand and there aren't any blackbirds, they're not making those same sounds. And so that's that particular familiar quality, that signifier of home and goodness and the known isn't around. Then if you come back to England and then you spend the night out here in the countryside and you hear the blackbirds again, oh my goodness, yes! So that I would say is vipaka, having been born, having the mind having imprinted. It says, yes, this is good. It's just a sound. Whereas if you were born in northeast Thailand and you never heard an English blackbird, coming to stay here and hearing the sound of the blackbird is like, what's that? What are they? Is that a ghost, or is that, what is that? Because it's not a sound that's familiar. So as a psychological value, I think the best thing to do with respect to that is to understand our habits, how the mind calls things good, how it calls them bad, how it calls it beautiful or ugly, and to see that's contingent, it's dependent. And as Luang Por Chah said in one of his Dhamma talks, all the things of this world are merely conventions of our own creation. Having established them, we get lost in them and give rise to all kinds of trouble and confusion. So the next one is greed and aversion seem obvious, but could you remind us what delusion is all about? So moha is the word for delusion. So dosa is aversion. Lobha is greed, or sometimes raga is a substitute for lobha. Raga means passion, and then moha is delusion. So those are the three unwholesome roots: dosa, lobha, moha. So I often talk about it in the way of saying exactly like this. Greed and aversion, they're pretty easy to spot. When you're greedy for something, you can see it. It's sort of highlighted, underlined 3 times in red. I want, good, more. Or aversion, hate, bad, wrong. It's vivid, it's easy to discern. Moha is the trickiest, because the very means whereby you would recognize it is being muffled or distorted, because the mind is in a deluded state. You can't trust it because it's confused. It was also interesting how speaking with Luang Por Panyananda, he used to come and teach here. After Luang Por Chah fell ill, Luang Por Panyananda used to come and visit our monasteries here in the West every year, pretty much every year. And he made a very interesting comment one time. He said he would teach in prisons very, very regularly. He said, murderers and burglars are very easy to teach. People who've killed, people who have robbed houses, so they're easy to teach. They've acted out of greed. They want to get some stuff. They steal it. They act out of anger. They kill someone, and then they're locked up, and they can feel the results of their actions. And it's visible. So the ones that are almost impossible to teach are the frauds, the people who have been like confidence tricksters and frauds. He said, and you could see his expression was like this. Yeah, he had quite an upekar kind of manner anyway, but you could see that, you could almost feel the amount of hours he spent trying to help people in prison. But if you've lied to yourself a lot, you've lied a lot to other people, you've been a fraud, then it's very hard for the mind to not believe in its own delusions. So I think that's a good example of how moha works. So when people say, well, how do you deal with moha? The very means whereby you would see delusion is not available because you're deluded. It's hard to see that your own opinions are totally weird or biased or confused because they seem real and good to you. So that the usual answer I give is, well, this is where your friends come in. When your friends say, do you really think that? Like, serious? Like, what makes you think that's true? And so I'm not kidding. That often, and that's one of the great values of spiritual friendship, is where you would not recognize your own delusions. Your companions, your spiritual friends, they can point that out because they can see, wow, she's really upset about something that it's really it's just a color of some paint. She's losing sleep over that, because the mind is really attached to how wrong and bad that is. And it's like a personal attack that we chose blue. It's like, and so then you can feed that back and say, well, you really seem to be upset about this, the blue that we chose for the that building. But and do you want to talk about that? And whereas if it's you that's feeling it, so well, blue, it's wrong. It shouldn't be blue. It's the wrong color. It's the wrong color. It is the wrong color. And that automatic judgment. It's often our friends, our sort of trusted companions that help us to see things differently. And the next one. Ajahn, what's better, pretending to be humble or joking about being vain? Again, I didn't actually intend to have those two following after my explanation about moha, but it does fit even more neatly. Pretending usually brings suffering. I have a long history. I was born in the year of the monkey. Whether you have any perceptions or likes or dislikes for astrological ideas, but it is said that the monkeys are prone to deception. They're very chattery and have busy minds, but they're also very good liars. They easily deceive and dissemble. And so, being born in the year of the monkey, I have a lot of monkey-like tendencies. So that pretending comes quite easy for me. I did a lot of acting when I was a kid. So pretending is quite natural for me, but pretending does not bring pleasant results. And I would say it's far better to joke about being vain than to pretend to be humble. Because joking about something, in a way, you are, and there are plenty of jokes and puns and double meanings in the Pali Canon. So the Buddha was very witty. It doesn't always come across in the reading of the Pali Canon, but for people who can read and speak Pali and know it from an Indian language background, there's a lot of word plays and puns and jokes kind of inside stories within the Pali Canon. And then someone like Lumpur Cha, he was very, very active in using humour, usually helping you to laugh at yourself was a way forward. So that joking about being vain, I would say, is a whole different story than pretending to be humble. Because in a way, because if you're pretending to other people, you're also pretending to yourself, and then that leads down the track that boosts the quality of moha. It boosts that aspect of delusion, and that's a rabbit hole that is not good to go down. And so I've been working on my own pretending tendencies for 40 years or so, and haven't entirely succeeded. But I would say that the simple answer to that is joking about being vain is much more skillful. And this one. If there are no thoughts, there is no thinker. So, thoughts are themselves the thinker, as William James put it. Ajahn, that's scary. Does that mean I don't exist? With a smiley face. Well, I wouldn't put it quite that way. That rather than saying thoughts are themselves the thinker, because even without thought, there can still be an I the experiencer, I the meditator, even when there's no thinking going on. So I wouldn't say that thought and self-view are sort of so tightly wedded as this, but rather self-view and conceit can arise with respect to thinking or not thinking, or concentrated mind states or emotions and whatever. So the way I would put it is that also taking a concept like I don't exist, as gets pointed out quite regularly, there's nowhere in the Pali Canon where the Buddha says there is no self. And there are places where he says to cling to the idea there is no self is wrong view. So taking that as a belief, there is no self. He actually uses that as a way of describing a wrong view. So what he does say, though, is Sabbe Dhamma Anatta, all Dhammas are not self. So what I would do with respect to this, is to look at the essay written by Ajahn Thanissaro called No Self or Not Self. And there's also, Ajahn Pasno and I repeated that in the island. It's a brilliant description of how the Buddha is, and rather than taking a philosophical position of there is no self, it's rather a set of tools to help the mind let go of the things that it usually identifies with as being what we are, like a body or a personality, a name, a gender, an age, a nationality, and all those kind of things, feelings of comfort and discomfort. And so I would say it's more skillful to recognize that the I am feeling, ahankara, the I amness, ahankara means made of I am, or mamankara, the feeling of owning, mineness. These are psychological structures that are useful. That nature is very, very effective. Things that work are what survives in the living system of beings. So we have an ego, we have a sense of I, because it's useful. It helps us to know which room to go to, which where to sit in the sala, who goes through the door first, what people's names are. As Ajahn Chah said, if we all had, he said, if we all had no self, or we only related to each other in that way, we didn't use names. We just say person, 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 and person. It'd be very difficult to organize the daily work program. Go like person and person and person, you come with me, and person, 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 you go with him. It's like, you don't know what to do. So we use names and concepts and identities because they are useful psychological structures, but they are not solid or permanent or absolute in any way. So I am is seen as a perception, and all perceptions, sabbe sankhara, anicca, they're impermanent. Sabbe dhamma anatta, all dhammas, all mental qualities, all qualities of nature are not self. So that they're convenient fictions that are used. And so rather than attaching to an idea of I exist or I don't exist, rather just to see those feelings of I arise and pass away and are useful in certain circumstances, but the feeling of I-ness is not what we are. And that if a scary feeling arises, let that be known. Oh, this is a scary feeling arising. A scary feeling passing away. It doesn't have to be a me who's the experiencer of the scary feeling, or or any kind of conceptual structure around that. The point of vipassana meditation, insight practice, is to train the mind to embody that quality of knowing the feelings of I arising and passing away, knowing the feeling of scariness, like, ooh, if I'm not that, what am I? It knows that, arising and passing away. And it's a training to embody that quality of knowing and to trust that, in a sense, going back to faith, to trust that if there is that knowing quality, that can be recognized as being a foundation. It's something that is indeed inviolable. The Dhamma is that which literally upholds. The meaning of the word Dhamma is that which supports or integrates. It's the integrative principle of the universe, mental, physical, spiritual. So that the process of vipassana meditation is allowing the Dhamma, that is the fundamental nature of reality, know itself, and doesn't have to be turned into a person or a this or a that, but rather it's the process of letting the Dhamma know its own nature. And the last one, Ajahn, what is your favorite Ajahn Chah story? So the one that comes to mind as appropriate to the time and place of whoever I'm speaking to. That's the best story, because it fits the time and the place and the situation. And I think if you asked Ajahn Chah, what's your favorite Ajahn Chah story, I kind of guess, or I trust that he would give a similar answer. That he said, what do you mean? What do you mean favorite? So, because it's not a matter of a particular sort of clever or funny or luminous insight, but it's what fits the moment. That's the thing that really brings value. What's appropriate to the time and the place and the situation. That's what makes something valuable and meaningful, and not just the content of the words or the image or the humour of it, I would suggest. But I see that the clock has gone round to 3:10 already, so I will leave it there for today.